Assalamualaikum everyone. Welcome to Coffee with Ustaz. I'm your host Indra Sahib.
I'm Mubarak Shah.
Welcome to our latest format.
Wow, Indra, I just want to tell you, it's amazing, man.
MashaAllah. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
All this is hadha fadlun min Rabbi.
I mean, Alhamdulillah. MashaAllah.
Alhamdulillah. So this is
All these
our
brick
new
walls
our
feel
new
so
studio.
nice.
Our new studio. Yeah. So Alhamdulillah. So this is something that we want to embark on also, having our own studio.
Yep.
So without further ado, let me allow us to introduce our beloved Ustaz,
Yes.
Al-Fadhil Al-Mukarram Ustaz Anwar Hussein. Ahlan wa sahlan wa marhaban Ustaz.
Jazakumullah khair. Hope everyone is fine, inshallah.
Alhamdulillah Ustaz, Alhamdulillah. Do you feel very cold Ustaz? Okay?
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Just nice.
Just asking. You know, I can get you a hot drink. Inshallah, okay, we are going to embark on a new. Not saying we're still going to follow up with our previous episode, which is about the hukum syar'i.
Yeah.
And hukum syar'i, I think there's a lot more that we need to discuss here.
We missed out a few stuff last time also. Yeah.
I think we can go into the part where on the hukum wadai, Ustaz. I think there's a part where we need to understand on the syarat, on the sabab, and also the mani. I mean, things that are related to the hukum syar'i. But maybe you want to start off first with why we have to have this kind of conditions, right, in hukum syara'.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man walah. In our last episode, and we were speaking about the definition of hukum syar'i, which is translated as the Sharia law. And I think by now we have understood that part of what is defined when it comes into Sharia law is that it is a revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that are related to the actions of the mukallaf. So what I will do, basically I will just try to summarize the main parts of this definition of the Sharia law. I mentioned in the last episode that it is divided into three parts. So when we speak about revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala related to the actions of the mukallaf, they are divided into three categories. So number one, we have what is meant, what is at times referred to al-iqtida'. Al-iqtida'. Or here Imam Sanusi in his Muqaddimat, he referred it to as talab. Talab is basically a command. This is number one. Number two is takhir. That Allah gave choices for mukallaf, human beings, to choose whether to do or not to do. And then the third one is what you mentioned, is the implementation, that is the wada'. Before we go into the wada' or the implementation of the laws of the Sharia, I will just summarize on what is this meaning of iqtida' or talab. So basically, revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when it comes to commandments, they are of two types. When it comes to commandments, there are two types. Basically, number one, we have commandments to do a particular action. The commandments need to do a particular action. Number two, we have a commandment to leave a particular action. So basically, you have a command you need to do, or a command you need not to do. So the commandments that commands a particular action is divided into two categories. This goes back to the nature of the commandment. If the commandment is something that is emphasized, what is the meaning of emphasize? Meaning, when we say a commandment that is emphasized, meaning there is a punishment if it is not performed. There is a punishment if it is not performed. So a commandment is an emphasize. This is what we meant in Islam as wajib. Wajib, and it means it is commanded from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the nature of this commandment is that it is emphasized.
Is it counted as obligatory?
Obligatory. What is the meaning of obligatory? Meaning there is a punishment. If it is not performed, there is a punishment. So we say this kind of commandment, there is ilzam. This is what Imam Sanusi used this word. What you call it? There is an emphasis to this commandment. Sometimes any commandment, there is no emphasis. It is a command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but it is not emphasized. So when we say it is not emphasized, meaning there is no punishment. This is what is meant with sunnah or mandub. So when comes to the commandments, we have the wajib, and then we have the sunnah. So this is the two categories of talab. Yani the commandment of a particular action. And then we have the opposite, that is the commandment to refrain from a particular action. And it is also divided into two parts, same thing. So there is a prohibition, a command that in the form of prohibition that is emphasized, and this is the haram. And then the commandment of a prohibition that is not emphasized, that is makruh. So we have wajib and mandub under the commandment that is emphasized. And then we have haram and wajib and mandub naam. And then we have the haram and makruh under the prohibition. One is an emphasis. There is an emphasis. The other one there is no emphasis. So altogether we have 4. So these 4 falls under talab. So this is the first part of hukum syar'i. This is the first part of hukum syar'i. And some books have usul and he mentioned this iqtida. This is iqtida. So under iqtida we have the 4 rulings: wajib, mandub, haram, and makruh. So basically the definitions is what we mentioned. When we say something that is wajib and in Islam, something that is obligatory, it means there is a punishment. And if you do not do it, there is a punishment, like performing the Fatim daily prayers. And we say this is what you call it, this is wajib. Using the siwak, doing the siwak in prayers, and this is mandub. And if you do not use any siwak, there is no punishment. It is recommended. And then when it comes to haram, like zina, for example,
yes,
there is any punishment. And then any makruh, like eating this, what you call it, this onion, when it comes into prayers, it is makruh. There is no punishment, but it is better to live. So the first part in hukum syar'i is about talab. And talab is divided into 2 categories, that's what we mentioned. And then we have any takhir. Takhir is basically the mubah. Mubah. Whether you do or you do not do, there is no sin. There is no sin and there is no reward. So we say this is mubah. And then comes the wada', the implementation. I believe in the last episode, I mentioned a bit some examples of wada'. When we speak about wada' and we speak about implementation, how do you implement the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What are the conditions? So under this implementation, we have to take into account 3 things. Number 1 is the condition. Number 1 is the condition. Number 2 is the sabab, is the reason. And number 3 is the mani', the preventive factor. So to make things simple, for example, we say that the reason of the obligation of the Zuhur prayers is the zawal, the entering of the time of Zuhur. So we say this is sabab. So whenever the sabab exists, the ruling exists. So now we say, for example, performance of the Zuhur prayers is wajib, but now you cannot perform any Zuhur prayers because the sabab is not in existence. So once the sabab sets in, then the obligation comes. The obligation comes. And then comes the condition that in order for me to perform any prayers, I have to take ablution. So ablution is shart. Because if I were to pray and I do not take into account the conditions of the validity in your prayer, my prayer will not be valid. This is mentioned in books of fiqh, and when it comes to the conditions and that you have to face the qibla, that you have to take any wudu. And then we have mani', the preventive factor. Mani', like for example, woman having menses. The sabab exists, the time of Zuhur enters. She can take ablution, but she cannot pray. So this is a mani'. A preventive factor that prevents her from performing this prayer. So she cannot perform any prayer because she has any menses. So menses is a form of mani'. It is a preventive factor. And then you have another 2 under wada'. You have sahih and batil. So in Islam, for example, if all the conditions are there, the integrals are there, then the prayer will be valid. Likewise, in buying and selling, when I want to buy something, for example, or I want to sell something, the conditions and the integrals of buying and selling must be present in order for me to say this is sahih or this is batil. So when it comes into prayers, for example, the conditions must be present, the integrals, I have to recite my Fatiha and perform all the integrals in your prayers, then only my prayer will become valid. So we have the notion of sahih and batil, and all this thing goes back into the integral. So basically, all together we have 10. So this is just a summary.
MashaAllah.
Altogether we have 10.
It seems
How
that
10? Because under talab, and how many we have?
4.
Under talab, and we have 4.
Four, yeah.
We have wajib, mandub, haram, and makruh. And then we have takhir,
Ibahah.
mubah.
Mubah.
So 5.
5.
So these 5, and we call it hukum taklifi. There's another term in it. And then when it comes to hukum wada, we have also 5. Sabab, shart, mani', sahih, batil.
Yes.
So altogether we have 10. So for every seeker of knowledge, whether you are a student of fiqh, or you are a student of usul, or you are a student of aqidah, all these things they have to be at the back of our minds. Whenever we study fiqh, and we have to understand any of these terms. So that we are able to appreciate, okay, this is hukm shari. So whenever our ulama mention this is a sharia law, so it goes back to this 10. So when we speak about sharia law, these 10 things and it come into place. These 10 things and it comes into place. For example, if we are speaking about ablution, or we say this is shart, this is any from wada.
Yeah.
This is any the condition when it comes into ablution and in prayers. When it comes into, for example, the obligation in your prayer, we say this is from the talab. Correct or not? And this is any from the talab. So when we have understood all these 10 things, and then it is also important for us to understand the sources. It is also for us to understand the sources. So for example, when we say something is wajib, we say something is wajib, or something that is mandub, or something that is haram, or something that is shart, or something that is mani'. What are all these rulings based upon?
Where did it come from?
Where does it come from? And if, for example, if a person asks us, why is the Fatim day prayer wajib? What is the evidence behind? Why is zina haram? What is the evidence behind? Why is the ablution is a condition to the prayer? Why it is the entering time of Zohar and is sabab? Why women in menses cannot pray? So all these things we go back to the sacred texts, because this is the source of the evidence. We go back into the Quran, and we go back into the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we in Islam, and we go back into the every any of these rulings, and it has an evidence based on revelation, and revelation based on the verses in the Quran, but based on the sayings of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this itself is the beauty in Islam.
Wow. Like no stone left unturned, is that? Like every single thing we have something to guide us to know what is the right way to it. But Ustaz, I want to ask you a question, like what is the purpose of Sharia? Like what is the purpose what does the Sharia why is it there? What is it supposed to, I know like, is it supposed to protect us from our life, this kind of stuff? What is the purpose of Sharia, in our life?
This has a relation with the question purpose of life. In previous episodes, we spoke about the purpose of life. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created any human beings, and there are a few things that Allah mentioned, and when it comes into the purpose of the life of human beings, and one of it is ibadah. We have khilafah, we have ibadah, and we have istimar. So the Sharia basically it serves as a platform or as a guide for us to perform those commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent prophets and messengers to inform any human beings how are they able to attain success in dunya and akhirah. How are they able to attain the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they are able to attain the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by abiding to the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is where the laws of the Sharia comes in. This is where the revelation on how are we able to perform. How are we able to perform the commandments? How are we able to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the obligations? And how are we able to refrain from the prohibitions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So basically, the Sharia is a guide. It's a guide on how we are able to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How are we able to serve the ultimate purpose in our lives to attain the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because without any Sharia, we will not know how are we able to perform our prayers, how are we able to understand what is obligatory for us, what is prohibited for us. So it is by the laws in every Sharia that we are able to understand that each and every action of us has a relation to the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So basically, the Sharia ini is a guide any for us. Sharia ini is a guide any for us. So we as Muslims, we are given this what you call it, this treasure of Islam, that we are able to obey Allah Subhanahu wa Taala by abiding into this laws.
Ustaz, I have a question, Ustaz. I think we some of us do study the books of fiqh, right? Like Muqaddimat Hadramiyah, Risalatul Jamiyah, Safinatul Najah. If we notice that the formation or the approach of every books, they will start with the shurut first. That means the conditions first.
Yeah.
For every ibadah. Let's say on the bab of wudu, on the topic of salah, they will elaborate further on the conditions of salah before going into the rukuns.
Yeah.
Then after that, they will go in after discussing on the rukun, they will go into on the topic of things that nullify or make it as a form of batil to the ibadah. It's very interesting that they, even to the format of the book, our scholars still keep this kind of hukum syar'i intact in the explanation of their books.
Yeah. What our scholars did, and basically they arrange these rulings in a very concise manner, and in a very sequential manner, to ease the seeker of knowledge and to study that particular field. And for example, usually our scholars will speak about the conditions before the integrals, because when we speak about conditions are basically things that are obligatory. But what is the difference between any conditions and any integrals? Conditions are things that are obligatory, but it is not part of that action. Whereas any integrals is within that action itself. So for example, in prayers, when we speak about the conditions in your prayers, we say, for example, to be in a state of purity is a condition in your prayer. And before you perform any prayers, you must make sure that you must be in a pure state. That you have bathed the obligatory bath, and you are not in the state of janaba, and you have performed your ablution, you are not in the minor ritual and impurity. You must make sure that you are in this state before you enter into prayer. Likewise, you must know the qibla. You must know the qibla, and you must make sure that there is no filth on your body or at the place in your prayers. So when we speak about shurut, conditions, and it always speaks about obligations that has to be performed before you perform that action. Whereas when we speak about integrals in your prayers, like recitation of Surah Al-Fatiha, how we need to do our ruku and sujood properly, and all these things, these are things that are related in prayers. So that is why our ulama mention the conditions first before the integrals. And then of course when it comes to the nullification in your prayers, everything comes what do you call it, after that.
Even the mandub, is even the mandub, the topic of mandub, right? They will not discuss on the topic of mandub at the earliest part.
Yes.
They will always discuss at the later part. After they have
after they clear the most important part.
The most important part, everything, and they will discuss about the mandub. So
they will speak about the conditions. They will speak. Then they speak about the integrals, and then they speak about the sunnahs, and then after that they speak about the makruh. The things that makruh, and you find this consistency in what you call it, all the chapters in fiqh. So the chapter in fiqh starts from tahara, all the way to Kitab Al-Itiq. At the end.
MashaAllah. I think another aspect of this hukum syar'i, Ustaz, I think a lot of people out there want to know on the dalil of dalil syar'i. So I think there's these two aspects that is very there's a comparison on these two aspects, on hukum syar'i and dalil syar'i. So maybe you want to elaborate further on that.
Basically, when we speak about hukum syar'i, and we speak, whether we speak about al-talab, and we speak about iqtida, we speak about mubah, or we speak about wada', everything are based on the sources of the sharia. I would like to point out a very interesting thing that is mentioned by Sheikh Said Ramadan Al-Buti in his book Kubra al-Yaqiniyat. And this is something that I mean, when I studied this book last time, it amazes me in reality. It amazes me because he began the book by speaking about one of the epistemology that is adopted by the Islamic tradition is this notion where it is said in kunta naqilan fasihatu wa in kunta mudda'iyan fadalilu. The Islamic tradition, and he speaks that if you are quoting something, then you must make sure the authenticity of your quote. You cannot just quote anyhow. You must prove the authenticity that what you quote is in fact
true.
This is point number one. Number two, if you are claiming something, then you must have the dalil. You must have the evidence. And this is the beauty of our Islamic tradition. When we speak about any knowledge in Islam, whether we speak about aqidah, or we speak about fiqh, or we speak about tasawwuf, everything is based on evidence. Everything is based on evidence. And in Islam, we have not only dalil shari, we also have dalil aqli. We have what you call it rational evidence behind so many of these things also. So the thing about Islam, that in everything that we are speaking that has a relation to the Sharia, everything has an evidence. We have evidence sometimes from the Quran. Sometimes the evidence comes from the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Sometimes the evidence comes from qiyas. Sometimes the evidence is based on the ijma'. So in usul al-fiqh, for example, these are the four we say al-muttafaq alayh, where all the scholars in fiqh they agree that these are the four sources of evidence. Number one, we have the Quran. And then number two, we have the Sunnah. And then number three, we have Qiyas. Yes. And number four, we have Ijma'. So whenever we speak about something that is wajib, or something that is haram, or something that is a shart, or something that is a mani, as what I mentioned earlier, then there is an evidence behind it. So a seeker of knowledge, when he wants to study about the evidences, then he will find all this evidence mentioned by our scholars in the books of fiqh, for example. Likewise, in the what you call it in the books of aqidah. And then when it comes to evidences, some evidences are strong, some evidences are not that strong. Some evidences are based on certitude. Some evidences are not based on certitude. So we have these differences, but all of these evidences has a very strong foundation within the Islamic what you call it Islamic sciences.
When you talk about evidence, does an evidence need to be relevant to the particular hukum or to the particular action or ibadah that we want to relate to it?
Meaning when for example, just maybe we just give some examples so that inshallah it become clearer. When it comes to prayers, for example, we have any evidences from the Quran, for example, pertaining to the obligation. If a person asks why prayers is compulsory, what is any evidence behind? So we have verses in the Quran, and Allah said, "Wa aqimus salah," establish any prayers. So this particular verse speaks about the obligation of prayers. And then we have the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "Buniyal Islamu ala khamsin." Islam is built on the five pillars, and one of it is prayers. And then we have ijma', we have consensus amongst the ulama. We do not have differences pertaining to the non-obligation of prayers. And all scholars mention on the obligation of prayers. So this kind of obligation, we say, is based on consensus, and it is based on certitude. It is based on yaqeen. So that is why if a Muslim he says that prayer is not compulsory, he becomes apostate automatically. Why? Because he goes against dalil that is qata'i. We say dalil that is dalil is qata'i, meaning it is based on yaqeen. So to go against something that is established in Islam and based on yaqeen, based on ijma', these are the things that can make a person apostate if he reject. And you find, for example, in aqidah, when it comes to the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all the evidences are based on yaqeen. All the evidence are based on yaqeen. Not even zon. Not even what you call it, zon is basically something that is less than certitude. So we have in Islam, this we differentiate between shak, what is waham, what is zon, and what is yaqeen. So we have dalil syar'i that is yaqeen, we have dalil that is zonni. We don't have any shak and waham. In Islam, what you call it, we do not consider shak and waham to be evidence in the first place, because none any of the rulings in Islam is built on doubt.
On such basis.
So doubt has no what you call it, no basis at all
no role in
Islam. If there is such, that it is not an evidence. So when we speak about aqidah, for example, we speak dalil on the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for example, dalil on the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All these are dalil that is based on yaqeen. Clear proofs in the Quran, and we have also dalil aqli also, and not only syar'i, not only based what you call it in the verses in the Quran, like qul huwallahu ahad, Allahu samad, but also we have evidences, rational evidences, as what we have discussed, I think in so many of the few sessions when we speak about contingency, and the argument, and all these things.
I think it's important for us to understand here, Ustaz, when we talk about dalil that is based on yaqeen and also zonni, and when we have dalil yaqeen and dalil zonni, I think our audience who's listening and also and viewing into this episode, they have to know the graph of it. I think for yaqeen is mainly 100% of belief. For zon will be 75% of belief. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ustaz.
Zon is basically anything that is more than shak and before yaqeen. So we can speak about more than 50% before it reaches any 100%. So in between any is zon.
So 50% is shak. Then 25% of your belief is waham.
Anything that is below 50 is waham.
Okay. So to clear the air, that's the the graph that we can envision, right?
Let me give an example. Let me give an example of our scholars, for example, when they speak about dalil qata'i, they use this terminology in usul al-fiqh. They call it this dalil is qata'i. Qata'i meaning it is based on yaqeen. It is based on yaqeen. So for example, the Quran is qata'i. We say qat'iyyatu subut. So let us look at the Quran, for example, and to appreciate how we can understand this beauty of the Quran itself. So when we look at the Quran is revealed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and during the lifetime of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, many of the Sahaba memorized the Quran. Many of the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum, they memorized the Quran during the lifetime of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So whenever verses of the Quran revealed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Prophet will read these verses to the Sahaba. There and then they will memorize. So these are the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and many of them, countless, the number of companions who memorized the Quran during the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. After the passing of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he came the Tabi'in. And the Tabi'in is much more in number than the Sahaba. And the people who memorize the Quran within the Tabi'in is far much greater than the Sahaba. Far much greater. The numbers. The numbers are far much greater than the Sahaba. And then came the generation after them. They are called the Tabi'in. They are much more. And the Hufaz, those who memorize the Quran, and also do not forget, the Quran is written during the lifetime of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam chose a few Sahaba, like
Hassan bin Thabit,
a few any of the Sahaba, like we have for example Huzaifa ibn Yaman, we have Amr ibn As,
Abdullah bin Rawah,
Amr ibn As, and for example they wrote down in the Quran, yani from the beginning until the end. So we have, in terms of manuscripts, we have the oldest manuscript, for example, in Birmingham, correct or not? In 2015, and they announced the oldest manuscript of the Quran, and it was written in the lifetime of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And when they compare it with the Quran and that present that we have now, it is the same.
It's the same.
This is the beauty of Islam. This beauty of Quran, which we do not find any in other faiths, in other religions. How Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve the Quran. And this Allah mentioned in the Quran, Inna nahnu nazzalna alayka dhikra wa inna lahu lahafidhun. Allah said, and we sent to you, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this reminder that there is a Quran, and we are the ones who are guarding the Quran. So generations and after generations, and people memorize the Quran. Likewise, the Quran is written as what we mentioned. So this is what we call it is tawatur. This is a mass transmitted report. It is what we call it, one of the meanings that the Quran is transmitted from one generation to another generation until today. For more than 1,400 years, the amount of people who memorize the Quran over these generations, and how the Quran is brought down from one generation to another generation, this itself brings about certitude in knowledge, certitude in the authenticity of the Quran. So we Muslims we speak about what you call it mass transmitted reports as one of the reason to attain certainty in knowledge. So let me give you an example. This scholars of hadith mentioned this example a lot. So imagine there's one person he came inside this room and tell us that at one point at one part of our country there is a fire. One person inform us. So we be thinking there might be a possibility that what he's saying is true, or maybe he heard it wrongly, or maybe he's lying. Possibility.
Yes.
One person. But imagine 100% inform you that there is a fire at one particular place, or 200% or 300%. Imagine. So now this information that is passed down to us from 200 people, 300 people. So this kind of information it brings about certainty. It brings about yaqeen. So what is the difference between one person informing me about a particular information and 300%? Is there a difference?
Yes,
there is any difference, because one person maybe we can have speculation. Maybe he understood it wrongly, maybe he forgot, maybe he he thought, or maybe he's lying and so on. But 300 people, what is the possibility of 300 people lying? So this is where our scholars mention yastahilu tawatu'uhum 'ala al-kadhib. If the numbers reach a certain number where it is impossible for them to come out with a lie, then that knowledge is based on yaqeen. So that is why we say the Quran is qat'iyyatu subut. The Quran is based on yaqeen, not based on dhann. And how can we understand this? And that's what we mentioned. And it goes from generations to generations. And of course, when we speak about the content of the Quran, there's no contradiction in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when speaks about the Quran, Allah said that if it is not from Allah, what will happen? La wajadu fihi ikhtilafan kathira. They will find contradictions in the Quran. Until today, there is not a single contradiction. In the Quran is mu'jizat. And of course, we can speak a lot about this. So the Quran is one of the sources of our evidence in Sharia law. So we say the Quran is qat'iyyatu subut. The Quran is qat'iyyatu subut. But then we have verses in the Quran, for example, verses in the Quran that are open to interpretation. This is another thing. So when it comes into the Quran, we say it is qat'iyyatu subut. When it comes into verses in the Quran, so many verses in the Quran, there are no differences in terms of the meaning. In terms of the meaning,
what the Quran says is confirmed, but the meanings or interpretation might differ.
Certain verses are open for interpretation. Certain verses are not open for interpretation, because the meanings are already been established. So the knowledge of fiqh, this differs the knowledge of fiqh and knowledge of aqidah. The knowledge of fiqh and many of the rulings of the knowledge of fiqh are based on verses they are open for interpretation. For example, we have the knowledge of wudu. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in la mastumun nisa that if you touch any woman, what you call it, and you do not have water for tayammamu, you have to do tayammum. Our scholars differ. What is the meaning la mastumun nisa? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, if you do lamastumun nisa, and you cannot find water, then you have to tayammum, meaning your ablution is invalidated. So we have differences between Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam Shafi. For example, and Imam Shafi say, lamastumun nisa, this lams, yani touching. So when you touch, if you are a man, you touch any woman that is non-mahram, then your ablution becomes an invalid. But Imam Abu Hanifa, and he mentioned, no, this lams, he takes any the metaphorical any meaning. Because lams also in the Arabic language can mean sexual intercourse. So he takes any the metaphorical any meaning. So that is why in the Mazhab Imam Abu Hanifa, that touching any does not any invalidate ablution. So both of them are looking at the same verse. Both of them are looking at the same word. But because this verse is open any for interpretation. So we have any differences any of the ulama when it comes any to the rulings any in fiqh. So what is very important for us any Muslims, and we have to what you call it, be proud any of our tradition, that evidences in Sharia law are based any on sound any evidences, and we have a rich any tradition when it comes into the interpretation of the Quran, interpretation of the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and when it comes into the hadith, and we have much more complex hadith, for example, that is passed down. Also, we have the same thing in mutawatir, qat'iyyatu subut. Yani some hadith any of the sayings of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is heard any by many any sahaba radiyallahu anhum and passed down to the tabi'in and tabi'in, and this is, we say, this qat'iyyatu subut. And then we have also any hadith any of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that is heard any by one person. Yani for example, we have the famous hadith innamal a'malu binniyat. We have the hadith of Sanum al-Khattab. So it is heard any by one person, but the condition any is that it must be continuous, and the chain any must be continuous. So whenever any we speak about the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we find, for example, books in Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, the hadith has a continuous any chain. From this particular Sahaba, this particular person heard from another person, heard from another person, heard all the way to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So there is a continuous any chain, and our scholars any speaks any about the trustworthiness any of the narrators, whether this particular person is trustworthy or not trustworthy, in order for them any to establish that this particular hadith is sahih, or this particular hadith is hasan or da'if, and whether it can be used as an evidence in the Sharia law, not permissible for us any to use any as an evidence, or whether it is based on yaqeen or not any based any on yaqeen. So we have all these any complex explanations any on the nature any of the evidences. So that whatever it is, any we say that every ruling any in Islam any has an evidence any behind it, and has any explanations any to it that are related any to that any particular ruling.
Ustaz, I want to go back to the purpose, but I remember reading somewhere about maqasid of the Sharia.
Yeah, maqasid Sharia.
Like every ruling has, I think it was about like 5 conditions, something like that. Like the ruling of each Sharia is supposed to support or has meaning for these 5 things. I mean, can you share? Like,
okay, maqasid Sharia yani is a branch of usulul fiqh. So as we are speaking about Sharia law, part of it is maqasid Sharia. For example, you have Imam Shatibi. Al-Imam Shatibi is one of the big imams when it comes to maqasid Sharia. And he came and he mentioned, for example, that if we look at the Sharia as a whole, we need to understand what is the objectives. We need to understand what is the objectives. For example, in Islam, zina is haram. Fornication and adultery is prohibited.
Yeah.
What is the maqsood behind it? Why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prohibit human beings from committing zina? Likewise, in Islam, it is prohibited to kill someone. What is the objective, and why is this so? So our ulama they mention that in every ruling in Islam, there is a goodness for human beings. There's goodness for human beings. This Shaykhul Islam Izzuddin bin Abdul Salam, he mentioned it all goes back into 2 things. He said Jalbul Masalih and Darul Mafasid. He said all the rulings in Islam, its purpose is to give benefit and masalih, benefit to human beings, and to repel bad things for human beings. Meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he makes something wajib, this particular thing has benefit for human beings. When something that is made haram by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because by doing the things that is haram, there is a lot of harm to human beings. So going back into zina, why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prohibit any zina? So our ulama mentioned this is to protect the progeny of human beings. This is to protect the progeny of human beings. So that is why we have a harsh punishment for zina. Because if we do not have a harsh punishment for zina, and people are committing adultery and fornication, this will destroy the human society. This will destroy the human society. Likewise, we have qisas. We have the punishments when it comes to killing. That if when a person kill someone, then he is to be killed. That's what Allah mentioned. وَلَكُمْ فِي الْقِصَاصِ حَيَاتٌ يَا أُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. That in the punishment of the qisas, there is life for you. Because a person, if he knows, for example, if I kill someone, I will be killed. Then I will be refrained from killing, because I am also afraid that by doing any killing, I will be killed.
Yeah.
So this becomes the reason that he refrained himself from killing. So when he refrained himself from killing, he is giving life to the society. So Islam speaks about the preservation of lives of people.
Yeah.
So that is why we have the qisas. Islam speaks about the importance of the progeny of human beings. So that is why we have the punishment of zina. Islam speaks about the in Malay we call it marwah.
Dignity.
Dignity and honor of human beings. That's why we have the hadul qazf. So it's not permissible in Islam for you to claim, for you to say that this person is a fornicator or this person is an adulterer. There is a punishment for it. Because Islam sees the honor of human beings. And likewise, all these rulings in Islam, we have the 5 things. Number 1 is the life, and then we have the honor, and then we have the progeny, the protection of the progeny, and then we have wealth, the protection of wealth. That's why we have the punishment of stealing, and then we have the other one is on the progeny and honor. So altogether, we have this
property. Is that?
Property.
Intellect.
The intellect. That's why we have the punishment for the drinking and liquor. So this basically the maqasid. So our scholars when they speak about the rulings in Islam, they also speak about the hikmah. Why?
Yeah.
Why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is making such obligation. Why? So basically, maqasid in Sharia, it speaks about the philosophy behind. Basically, to understand in a deeper sense, what is the purpose of such rulings, to appreciate the Sharia.
The spirit of Islamic law. Yeah.
No wonder, Ustaz, I think a lot of scholars, when they elaborate on this topic, they like to use this term, al-wasailul hukumul maqasid. That means things that ties to the hukum. I think is a form of the objective. Maybe you care to elaborate further on the aspect of that. I mean, al-wasailul hukumul maqasid.
As what I mentioned, that we have the rulings, and then we have the objectives. We have the objectives of the ruling. So it guides the faqih, the person who looks at the situation on how he's able to give any precedence to certain rulings over other rulings. So for example, Islam puts the life of human beings much greater than his property. So for example, if a person is in a state where he cannot fast, for example, and he's sick, if the doctor tells him that if you fast you will die. So now it is in the month of Ramadan, we say fasting is wajib. Tamam? Fasting is wajib.
Yep.
But at the same time, this person, if he fasts, he will
Die.
He will die. So which one we give any preference?
His life.
Do we say that it's okay and he just fast and if you die and you become a shaheed?
Hari kiri kan.
Or we tell him for your case no need to fast. Yeah, it's not obligatory. And now the ruling change. Now the ruling change because Islam and it gives importance to saving any of lives.
Yes.
It's not stagnant, is that? Like the rulings Islam is not like one way highway. It is able to move along the time.
That is why you see that is why we say Islam and it is applicable and to all zaman, to all situation and times. So we are living in this postmodern world. Now people are not using the term modern anymore because now we are postmodern now.
Yes.
So how are we able to appreciate the laws of the Sharia? And how are we able to apply the laws of Sharia in the situation that we are in? Sometimes we are living in a situation that certain things that it is almost impossible for us to to apply them. So we will find, for example, Islam and it give us a way out. So this is the beauty of Islam. If Islam is rigid, then it becomes difficult.
Correct.
If Islam is rigid, it becomes difficult. So in every difficulty, as what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, inna ma'al usri yusra wa inna ma'al usri. Whenever there is a difficulty, and there will be an easiness, and there will be a way out to the difficulties that we face. And this is also based on the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, la darara wa la dirar. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned that the basis of the Sharia that it doesn't give any harm to people. So whenever there is harm, to yourself or to your wealth, Islam will give a way out.
But the thing about harm, the hukum Sharia got certain part of harming yourself or not, right? Maybe I can relate to this. I think women nowadays, they look at hijab as a form this is oppressing, depressing to oneself. Why should I wear this hijab? And why should I close my whole 3/4 of my face and just left my eyes open, for people to see? Why can't they see my beauty, right? So on that aspect, maybe they require more explanation, Ustaz, on this. Why in the context of hukum syari, wearing the hijab has a purpose of going back to Mubarak question just now, maqasid syar'i, and why does that has a purpose for them?
When it comes to the Islamic clothing, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the hijab, for example, in the Quran, let us look in Surah Al-Ahzab, one of the first few verses that were sent, that were revealed, that speaks about the obligation of hijab. We have to understand that in the early Islamic era, hijab is not wajib. Hijab is not wajib. In the Meccan period, hijab is not wajib. So the commandment of covering of the head for women it comes in Medina. So for example, we have the verse in Surah Al-Ahzab, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, Ya nisa ya ayuhan nabi qul li azwajika wa banatika wa nisa'il mu'minin yudnina 'alayhinna min jalabibihin. Allah said, O Prophet, tell your wives and your daughters and nisa'il mu'minin, the woman folk of the believers, yudnina 'alayhinna min jalabibihin, to cover their heads and their chests. Zalika adna an yu'rafna fala yu'zain. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the reason. So that they will not be known, fala yu'zain. So they will not be no harm and will be afflicted to them. So we have to understand that one of the wisdom behind the obligation your hijab for women is to protect to protect the woman, to protect the woman and also to protect the men. To protect the woman and also to protect the men. So what happened in Medina in the last time? Because there was an incident that a woman was not wearing the hijab. So there are some people who tried to seduce, who tried to molest and all these things. So Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala sent any these verses and to tell any the women folk about the obligation any of this any wearing any of the hijab. So this is any basically any some any of the wisdom, and it serves any as a protection, and at the same time also it serves any protection any for the men, so that the men do not look any at the woman and then in a lustful way.
Yes.
That can lead any to other things any that what you call it, that can harm any his iman, to prevent any the committing any of zina and all these things. So that is why Islam any make it obligatory any for women any to cover any themselves and need to as something any to prevent any the things any that are sinful any to be committed any by both any human the man and the woman. We have any verses any in the Quran and it speaks any about the obligation to lower any of the gaze. So we find any Islam any puts any this rulings any on what any to wear and what any not to wear. All these are basically as a guide yani for Muslims any to live in a society where it is based any on respect and dignity for both any male and females.
Interesting is that like even a lot of the rulings you were sharing just now, it comes together with not just a personal law. It's also like the laws that in some place is for the betterment of the society. It's not like my own right is most important. You know, it's ensuring that the entire society is a fruitful society, like you mentioned, progressive. You know, is that like you the laws of Islam is to make sure that community progresses. Would you agree to that? Is that like something like that?
Yeah, progress, but not the definition and of what some people are saying nowadays. When we speak about progress, and we are speaking about progress in the Islamic in the Islamic perspective. Progress in a sense that we attain the pleasure of Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala as a whole, as a society. So all these rulings of Islam, as what you mentioned, it not only it benefits to the person, it benefits the society, and not only the benefit comes in the form of the worldly matters, but also it has relation with the hereafter, because all this carries any reward. A woman who puts on the hijab with the intention of obeying Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala, and she understands that this is a commandment and it comes from Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala, she will be rewarded by Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala. And men for example who are lowering their gaze and not look at women that can that can increase his lust, all these things, he will also be rewarded by Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala. So these are some of the things that Islam has placed for for Muslim and society. So if you have a society where the women are dressed modestly and the men are lowering their gaze and so on, you will find there will be peace in the societies. There will be not much any cases of rape or cases of molest or harm towards any woman and so on and so forth. So this is the beauty again. This is the beauty of, because now today we are living in situations we find, for example, some countries have a very high rate of rape or molest and killings. All these things sometimes it is the result of people who cannot control their desires, because they are looking at things, at the some body parts that are exposed to such an extent that they cannot control their lust, that brings them towards committing such acts. So Islam basically puts the barrier, so that human beings do not breach and do something that can harm themselves.
I think when talking about hijab, women nowadays, and I'm not saying everyone, I'm just saying specifically on those that oppose hijab, maybe, right? They would like to dwell on these two parts and be confused on these two parts also, freedom and on the aspect of religion. Because freedom, when they take out their hijab, they expose their beauty. For them, they possess freedom. This is my freedom of being a human being, Whereas for in their mentality of when they down the hijab, they think that they are being oppressed or being secluded by the society. Right, Barak? I mean, this mainly cause a lot of friction, right? That we can see in our modern world right now. But
postmodern world.
Postmodern. But I believe what Ustaz has elaborated on the part of hukum syara, I think is very, very beneficial for us to understand that everything has the maqasid, everything has the objective, especially on the hijab part also.
Yeah. Like Ustaz also mentioned, like, the word like progressive, how you define lah. If they define freedom as opening their, as that is considered freedom, then
unveiling their
that
body
means they
parts,
probably have understood freedom wrongly lah.
Yeah, freedom has to be, has to be defined, because if a person and he claims to go and he by freedom and he based on his thoughts. So we asked the question: is it okay? And if like a woman and he goes out wearing anything, you will find that normally people won't agree to that, because they know that this can lead to more greater problems.
Yes.
So there must be a level of a level of dress code.
Yeah, a line.
So for example, a woman cannot go to the office in the bikini. So even going to the office and there is a there is a dress code. For example, a woman and working in hospitals, there is a standard dress code.
Yes.
So you cannot, a certain workplace and you cannot enter if you do not abide by the dress codes. And teachers in school and has a certain dress code, they are advised not to show what you call it, certain body parts if they are teaching, for example, secondary students.
Yes.
Because they themselves knows that you cannot be just claiming ultimate freedom.
Correct.
There must be some dress code. There must be some limitations, and that must be set, because they understood the problems that can that can come. So when we speak about freedom, also we have to take all this into consideration. And of course, for us, Allah Subhanahu wa Taala is the creator. Allah knows best. More than anybody else, and Allah knows what is good for human beings. So we as Muslims, we return into revelation. That is the best. Rather than all of us we go back into our own intellect. I might differ with you on what is the best, or what is the appropriate. And some people might have a different understanding. Some people might be saying it's okay for all of us to be naked and in the streets. Some people might have that kind of understanding. But again, you see, the beauty of Islam is that it connects us to revelation. And Allah Subhanahu wa Taala knows what you call it, what is the masalih and the mafasid, and what is the things that gives any benefit for human beings, and the thing that can harm them. So by abiding into the Sharia, we will find what you call it, goodness.
A clear guide, is that?
A clear guide that will give us any benefit, not only in this life but also in the life hereafter.
Mashallah. I think we come to the point from this episode.
Oh, it's beautiful ending.
It's as if like previously we have the Manhaj 2.0. I think today we have Hukum Syara'i 2.0.
2.0. Yeah.
Mashallah.
But again, we are in the book of Imam Sanusi, Muqaddimat. Some people might be wondering, and we are speaking about Aqidah, but it's more into fiqh. And but this has also relation with Aqidah, because when it comes to belief, also it has relation with the Sharia. But after this, most of what we are going to speak about has relation with Aqidah. Only thing that Imam Sanusi, the first thing he speaks about Hukum Syara'i, so that we are able to understand the difference between the Sharia law, and because after this we are going to speak about the empirical laws and the rational laws. So once we have understood what is Sharia law, at least we can differentiate later. What is the difference of fiqh and aqidah? What is the difference between the Sharia law and the rational law, and we have the empirical laws and all this that are coming.
After this, after this, Ustaz, they must put on thinking cap lah.
Nice. I want to see that kind of cap got sell in Shopee, bro.
Later we Google to buy that.
Mashallah. I think we reached our end part of our episode, and I think it's been a very fruitful discussion. Mashallah. Alhamdulillah. And we would like to thank Al-Fadhil Mukarram Ustaz for all his great guidance. Mashallah. And I would like to thank our viewers too. And for those our viewers who have question, please post your question on our Facebook comment and even on our YouTube channel. We have our comment section below. You can post your question for Al-Fadil Ustaz. And inshallah, we will answer your question during on the next episode. Inshallah. Next episode. That means the consecutive episode lah.
Yeah.
Inshallah. So with that, signing off.
I hope you guys like our new background, our brick walls.
It's not like consume.
Yeah.
Okay. So signing off from Coffee with Ustaz. I'm your host Indra Sahib.
I'm Mubarak Shah.
See you guys.
Thank you.
Next episode.
Assalamualaikum.